Welcome to Keepers of the Flame, NFL Films at the Super Bowl, and I'm with 1990 Newhouse grad, Pat Kelleher,
No cues.
vice, vice president and executive producer of NFL Films. So, Pat, we've obviously known each other a long time. You're a Syracuse diehard. You have your text message thread with your former your fellow alums talking about Syracuse hoops, lacrosse, everything. Um,
Season
and
ticket holder in football still got my season ticket.
That's right. And your son came here.
Yes, he graduated 2 years ago.
Right. So great to have you back, even if you're not on campus, but great to have you be part of this. I just want to kick it off really quick. And NFL Films obviously is connected deeply with the league and with the Super Bowl. How many Super Bowls has NFL Films been a part of?
Everyone. Back since, the company started before Super Bowl one, but we've shot every Super Bowl since they started. Before it was called the Super Bowl, there were the NFL championship games, and then when the AFL and the NFL merged and they started doing what they called the Super Bowl, the championship game, NFL Films has been shooting and producing content around every Super Bowl since its inception.
And Steve Sable, who, obviously was the kind of artistic founder of NFL Films, his father, Ed Sable, started the company. Steve, prior to his death, had been to everyone, right?
Correct. Yeah, he was one of a handful of people that attended every Super Bowl since it started.
That's amazing. And so one of the shows, in obviously we'll get into the actual game itself and NFL Films, approach to the game. But there's a lot going into the week leading up, and obviously the whole season. It's a culminating, event. One of the shows that NFL Films produces, Road to the Super Bowl. Can you talk about that programming and how important that show is to kind of the overall history of the company and its relationship with the game?
Yeah, so we've been producing Road to the Super Bowl since 1974. And this year and over the last several years, it'll air on Super Bowl Sunday on our broadcast partner who's ever producing the Super Bowl for that year. So this year it'll be on NBC. Road to the Super Bowl, it's an hour show, an hour special that we do every year that kind of recaps some of the more important and interesting storylines throughout the season with a little bit of a focus more so on the two Super Bowl teams. So it's a great show for us. It's a great time slot, which our producers like. Obviously, we want people to be able to consume our content and watch our shows. And the fact that we kick off NBC's Super Bowl pregame coverage on Super Bowl Sunday is a great opportunity for us to showcase our storytelling.
I love that show because I feel like it's like the greatest hits album of the season for NFL Films. Like if you like what NFL Films does, you get to see the best shots, the best sound bites, everything, right?
Yep, yeah, for sure, and all compiled into one 44-minute show, which is great for us.
That's great. How is the approach as you get into this week, leading up to the game? How is the approach for the company different than anything else?
Well, I mean, I think it's so massive, right? I think people talk all the time about how big the Super Bowl is, and you can't really do it justice with our words. You almost have to say the numbers, and 100 million people, and we produce the Super Bowl world feed for 180 countries. So it's so giant. And what we try and convey to our producers is recognize how giant it is, but it's still a football game. And we still have to tell the story of the football game with our images, with our sound, with our storytelling, with our script, with our music. So we try and boil it down to that, knowing how big it is. Don't lose sight of the fact that this is the biggest game. It's a national holiday, so to speak, in our country, which is great. But tell the stories of the game. Tell the stories of the players, the coaches, the drama, the backstory of these players' journeys. I think actually when last time I saw you, we played a clip of some stuff from the Super Bowl, and we had wired Travis Kelce 2 years ago when they won the Super Bowl, and the interaction with him and his dad, and post game after Travis had won the Super Bowl, and to see and hear his reaction and his dad's reaction to what was going on was just about as powerful as anything we've ever got.
Yeah, I think that obviously the access is huge, right? So you're right in there and able to experience that with the players and the team, and that's something, you know, historically unique to NFL Films. How many different shows and programs and networks are you working with on content that's either going to be used during that week, or obviously, you know, as the season comes to an end?
Yeah, so I guess we'll talk. I mean, we do a ton of shows that lead up to the Super Bowl, but let's just focus on now. So we have our cameras. Dave Malik will talk about our cameras. We capture all this content at the Super Bowl, and as the game's happening, we're feeding footage back here to NFL Films. We're logging it and editing it for a variety of shows. We do the Super Bowl instant highlight that we sell direct to consumer. We have our Game Day All Access show that'll recap the Super Bowl that air exclusively on YouTube. We have our NFL Films Present show that airs on Fox Sports 1. That's a half-hour show. We have our hour show Inside the NFL that'll break down the Super Bowl with our footage. That'll air on Paramount Plus. And then we have Turning Point, which is we produce. That'll probably be about 40 minutes of content that'll air on ESPN Plus. I think that's everything.
Can you just actually, I think it'd be easier next time if you just name the stuff that you're not working on and the networks that you don't work on, and then we'll
we're very fortunate that people like football, and so
right.
We get to produce a lot of shows for a lot of partners.
I think it's exciting to see all of the different platforms that are available, you know, especially obviously the streaming platforms, but shows that even, you know, and this is a sidebar, but shows like Hard Knocks in Season with the Colts and the Joe Montana documentary on Peacock. It's amazing. And I think that's always been the only thing holding the company back, really, is just how many, you know, where you could put it, where people can go grab it, right?
Yeah, I think that, and we've talked a little bit about this in the past, that the appetite for content right now, for edited sports content, is probably as big as it's been since you and I started. I think the amount of streamers and still broadcast partners and cable companies, the appetite for edited sports content is pretty unprecedented right now, which is great for us. And
exciting,
obviously,
right?
yeah, and obviously the NFL is as popular, more popular than any other sport in our country right now. So we're pretty fortunate to be producing, as storytellers, to be producing content in this era right now.
Yeah, I love it. You know, you mentioned a lot of the places that the footage gets used. I do want to talk about kind of you know, the name of the series, Keepers of the Flame. You know, I always felt like the DNA of the company is the archival aspect of it. How important is it that the game is captured in the way it is, and that all of this footage kind of lives kind of historically in perpetuity?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, as important as those shows are that'll air the week of the Super Bowl that I just listed off, those kind of pale in comparison to we'll capture this footage and we'll have it forever, and we'll use it in shows from now until you and I are no longer walking this earth, right? Like, I mean, we produce shows about Super Bowl one. Sorry, we produce shows about Super Bowl one based on the footage that we captured at the LA Coliseum, you know, many years ago. So, and we're fortunate here, our founders, you mentioned Ed and Steve Sable, recognize the value of our library. And we're in an advantage here that we have spent a lot of time and effort and money preserving our history and our library for many years, more so than other sports leagues. You know, baseball's been around longer than football, but they didn't have the visionaries that Ed and Steve were to realize the value of that footage and preserving that footage and not throwing out that footage. So what we'll capture, we hope, and that we have a great game, right? And it'll be an incredible game that people will want to watch and listen to stories about for years to come.
I was I am of the demographic and age that I am. I was on Facebook the other day, and there was on the NFL Films Facebook page, there was Hank Stram's audio wire from the Super Bowl, which like for people watching this, go and find it. You probably have no idea who I'm talking about. He was the Kansas City Chiefs coach, really at the inception of the merger, and what a character. And the fact that like you watch that footage now and it feels like it could be happening, besides the words he uses, it could be happening yesterday. It's amazing, like the quality and how it still resonates. I think that's huge. When you think about iconic moments that NFL Films has captured in Super Bowls, what pop up for you?
That's a good question. More recently, certainly the Malcolm Jenkins interception against the Seahawks that vaulted the Patriots to one of their 100 Super Bowl wins. And
You're a
that
Dolphins
one,
fan. You're a Dolphins fan. I want to make sure
yeah.
everyone knows you're a Dolphins fan. We might have some Boston area people on here. So
yeah, no, I love the Patriots. I love Belichick. But anyway, so that's a great moment, right? And we captured it. And that game we had Tom Brady wired, right? So you see and you hear Tom Brady's reaction when Malcolm, geez, Jordan, what's his last name?
Oh shoot, I'm blanking on it too.
Malcolm Brown? No, Malcolm. It's not Malcolm Jenkins. Sorry. But so that's a moment, right? And there are other moments. Again, another one. The Patriots comeback in the Super Bowl, down 28-3, and being able to capture that moment and seeing with our footage and our sound, seeing that play out and see the Falcons unraveling and see and hear the Patriots realizing while it's happening that that they were making history. Those are pretty great moments.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think everybody of every generation then has these different things to attach to. So for Patriots fans or football fans, who were really in tune with those kind of two games, those kind of NFL Films moments will stick with them forever, just as, the drive, this obviously was a Super Bowl moment, or, my sons even talk about the John Elway being helicoptered by the Packers in Super Bowl 32, like these kind of things stick with it, and then you have this amazing historic record of it visually. So I think that's huge. Last kind of Super Bowl question: how do you handle games like a couple years ago, that Rams Super Bowl that was really a clunker?
Bums me out when we have clunkers. When we were young, that was the norm. Super Bowls were blowouts, right? They were blowouts, and we've been really fortunate over the last, it's been a while now, 10, 15 years where we've had some compelling games, great games, comeback games. Steelers versus Cardinals was a great game. It bums me out as a storyteller. When people ask me who am I rooting for in the Super Bowl, I root for overtime in the Super Bowl. I root for who's ever losing, unless the Dolphins are playing, but I'll root for who's ever losing, because we know that the closer the game, the better our shows are going to be, right? And if it's a blowout, it's not as compelling. If it's close, if it's dramatic, if there's ebbs and flows, if there's comebacks, that makes our shows better. So I root for a close game. I root for overtime, because to me, the Super Bowl is way too fast, and when it's over, I get bummed. And our season,
there is a real like hangover the next day. It's crazy. It's and I remember I was in a fraction involved with a fraction of the Super Bowls you've been involved with, and I can feel that kind of next day feeling is, for someone who's lived it for that whole season, really almost a whole year. It really is it's real.
And so when there is a blowout, though, that's a challenge for us, right? It's a good challenge for our producers and our storytellers and our writers and our editors to make it compelling, to figure out, okay, maybe the game wasn't great from a competitive standpoint, but what are the storylines? What are the personal stories of these coaches and players? And I think it challenges us to tell better stories, and it challenges us as storytellers to be better when the game isn't as compelling as we all want it to be.
Yeah, you have to get pretty creative on how you what tools you pull out of your tool
Yep.
chest to kind of handle that. Personal anecdote I remember, and I think you'd appreciate this. One of the many of my little weird jobs when I was with NFL Films was often to take Steve Sable to his box for at pre-Super Bowl, because Steve he wasn't too geographically oriented. But the Titans Rams game, the Super Bowl 34 in Atlanta, and I brought it. He was way up near the ceiling, where in the old Georgia Dome, and I brought him up there, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing? Where do you have to be for the game?" And I said, "I'm good for a while." And he's like, "Why don't you just hang out here for a bit?" And that was where I learned that lesson about you really are, as a filmmaker, rooting for the good story. Because he was like, "What do you think? Who are you kind of pulling for?" And I was like, I really like the Titans here. I like McNair. I like what Eddie George, they're, and he's like, "You're pulling for the wrong story." Basically, he was like, and for people who are watching this now, if you're not familiar with that Super Bowl, that's the Kurt Warner Super Bowl that there's now a movie about, that's in theaters, and it's not about his silver puffy jacket. It's about him being the Rams quarterback. But and it obviously it went NFL Films' way that day, not Tennessee's, but with the St. Louis Rams winning it. And I think that was
Part
great.
part of the reason Steve was rooting for the Rams, in addition to the Kurt Warner story and all those stories, because he had such a great relationship with Coach Dick Vermeil. They were
Dick
very good
Vermeil.
friends.
Right.
Coach Vermeil was wearing a wire for that game, and Steve knew that we were going to get some great stuff from Coach Vermeil, some great elements, some great access, some great sound if the Rams won. So yeah, Steve always rooted for the best story. It's true.
Yeah, he didn't tell me that, but that's good to know. That's awesome. Well, Pat, thanks so much. My last one's a non-Super Bowl kind of related question. You're a few years out from being a Newhouse student, but how much of Newhouse is still part of what you do, and kind of what you kind of learned here, and growing here? How much of that have you carried with you over your career?
Well, I tell this to everyone. If I didn't go to Newhouse, and I didn't, through Newhouse, get my internship at NBA Entertainment in the summer of 1989, I don't think I would have been able to find a career in this profession that I love so much. I love sports, and I love sports storytelling. So getting that internship through Newhouse at NBA Entertainment launched a pretty fun career for me. I think if I didn't get that internship, if I didn't go to Newhouse, I probably would have, went to business school or got my law degree, which I'm sure that would have been fine too. But Newhouse was the foundation for me. I went there thinking I wanted to be a sportscaster. I met Mike Tirico, and I realized that I was never going to be as good as him. So I quickly pivoted to production, which is a great move. One of my professors, when I went to them and said, "I'm not going to be as good as Mike Tirico, what am I going to do?" And they said, "Well, what about behind the camera?" And I was like, "Oh, that exists." And then I got some internships at Channel 3 in Syracuse and at NBA Entertainment, and it was a great start for me.
That's fantastic. All right, one bit of advice for incoming students or prospective students: when they get to campus, what do they need to do?
Have fun, enjoy Syracuse, enjoy. Is this for Newhouse students or sports in particular, Jordan?
Really, people are interested in all of Newhouse, and obviously, we're sporty folks, so they probably have some sort of inkling of sports if they're watching this. But I
think have fun, enjoy the experience. Try and not get caught up in kind of the negative aspects. I know when I was there, everyone would complain that our cameras weren't good enough, and like that doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you meet some great people that that I met that are still my best friends to this day. Build those relationships, and those relationships will probably come in handy in your career as well. But just enjoy the experience, have fun. Don't stress out about where it's leading to, and getting a job afterwards, because right now the job market is really good. And so you shouldn't stress about that, because certainly in the sports job market, the amount of appetite for sports content, for edited sports content, for live sports content is off the charts. So enjoy your time at Newhouse.
Great.
It's great.
Well, thanks, Pat. And, I obviously always enjoy talking with you, but I really think this is great information for our prospective students, our current students, everyone, and have a great Super Bowl and rest of the season.
Thanks, Jordan. Go Cuse.
All right. Thanks, Pat.